I'm Sawyer, and you're listening to Our House A to Z.
I was just reading a statistic today.
Oh, gosh, this is going to be really good. You were reading a statistic?
I was reading a statistic.
Where?
And it was that the number one need in the church today.
Oh, my gosh.
Let me ask all the listeners out there, how many of you have great ideas that always get stolen, and how many of you are stealers of great ideas? Because I feel
hands all over this place.
I see hands in the back all over this place. I feel like, well, everybody's one or the other. I feel like my wife is the source of a lot of great ideas that she doesn't get credit for. And I just was beginning this podcast as an example of that.
You've been the main culprits. I was like, wait.
I know.
That was my idea.
I know.
And it's okay.
I know.
The two become one.
Yeah.
I think it's not the two become one. I feel like you always accredit my ideas to other people all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm always like, I have this thing in me where it's like you can never get credit, like you shouldn't get credit for things.
Yeah, I like that.
So I would never like be like, excuse me, that was my idea.
You wouldn't do that?
I mean, I think to you, like by yourself I would, but not in front of people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, I have tried to get over it. Not so much ideas, but things that I've said. I feel like I'll make a statement and then I'll hear someone else say it, who I said it to or who I said it in front of.
Yeah.
And it's always like, huh.
But it's that flesh. It's like the tinge of
I
like
know.
flesh in you, and you're like, dang it, why does that bother me? It doesn't bother
like,
me. It's fine.
It's like, it's the Holy Spirit.
I know.
It's like the Holy Spirit. I think, I don't want to say it's like spiritually inspired, but it's like anything I have was given to me by the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So it's like, all right, even whatever, if it's a good idea or a witty invention. I think it's just one of those things that the Lord wants us to get over.
Yeah.
And to like, think part of thinking of others is better than ourselves. It's like, oh, like you actually say that better.
Yeah.
You know, you wear it better. Looks better on you.
Looks better on you.
Yeah. So anyway, why don't you share this statistic?
I think we always grew up like that. Like
what? Like what?
Like I would say with a lot of humility. Like my parents really, really pushed the humility thing.
Yeah.
And not in like the woe is me humility, but it's never about you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like it doesn't matter. Like everything you do have is because the Lord like gave it to you. And it wasn't yours anyway. It's because you're like blessed, and you're only blessed because the Lord like has chosen to bless you, and it's not anything good that you've done or how good you are or how smart or creative or anything like that. And I feel like my parents really drilled that in, not in a mean way, but that was very much the atmosphere at home. My parents still exemplify that. I think that's why sometimes when you do see people like want to take credit for something, it's really hard. You're like, that's, prideful. Anyway, we started this conversation because I had read this thing where someone had asked, what is the greatest need in the American church today? And the response was brave leaders. Yeah. And
where was that? Where did you find that?
It was something that Nate Finocchio had said.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like there's no way that could be the case. Like that's the greatest need. Credit. Of course, we don't want to be like, there's no way that's the greatest need of the church today. But that's how the Lord like left setting up the church, like where there had to be like these brave leaders. I mean, like think about like some of the first starters of the Christian church.
Yeah. Well, they were all martyrs.
Yeah.
So like you got to be brave if you're going to die for it.
Right.
I mean, that's, yeah.
So you were saying I'm very brave before we started this podcast, and I was arguing with you that I'm not brave, and I get very nervous because I really do. I guess there's a good part of me that is sensitive to people's feelings, and I always want to balance that like sympathy for people's feelings with like an understanding of empathy, but like not to the extent where I like wouldn't be truthful, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think is a good working definition of brave?
I don't know. I can't come up with a definition like that. I'm not the wordsmith.
You make me brave. You can sing that song in the background.
See, even when you sing that song, you sang it recently at like a staff meeting. I was like, you must be brave to sing this song.
Why?
I don't know. Because that song is so weird.
It is weird.
It's a cool weird song, but you like it.
It's a cool song. Just to give credit where credit's due. Was it Jen that wrote it?
I believe it was Christine DeMarco, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Probably right. I think bravery is always the thing that you're not. It's like...
Oh, maybe Amanda Cook.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Yeesh.
One of the two.
Okay. Yeah, people can look it up if they care that much. But it came out of Bethel, right?
Yep.
It's a Bethel song. I think that brave is like, a lot of people say like, oh, to stand up and just speak truth like that, like without caring about the backlash, without caring about the whatever, like that's really brave. And people will say that from time to time because we've been pretty outspoken about like controversial things here. But I actually feel like some people are wired to be more like that by default.
Yeah.
And so sometimes brave means like not going against the world, but like being willing to go against yourself. Like real bravery in somebody is if I, for instance, am somebody who's more prone to stand up and just say hard things that a lot of people would struggle to say, it doesn't mean I'm brave. What would be brave for me is, well, that part comes easy. What would be brave for me is to go against that nature enough to be empathetic or to be sensitive of somebody that might have a negative effect on, or might have not the reaction of like people standing up applauding. I think so bravery is like the opposite of whatever your instinct is.
Yeah.
You know, I guess.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think
like for a strong person, like for a crazy, crazy strong person,
they're like completely unfazed. It's not a hard thing to be quote unquote brave, but that's not actually being brave is what you're saying.
Right. I guess. And I think if you took like Hercules, or you took like the strong, like ripped fighter guy, real strength for him might be to be like gentle. You know what I'm saying? It's like I think it's just being willing to go against your natural disposition.
I get it. Yeah. And we talked about last week when we talked about sibling rivalry, I'm a middle child. And so there's definitely more of that like peacekeeper in me. Not peacemaker necessarily all the time, but I do err on the peacekeeper because a lot of conflict makes me very uncomfortable. And so that's really hard for me. I think some of it comes from a little bit of like the perfectionist thing where it feels like if I do something wrong and it's like hurt somebody, it like is really hard. Like it will just like eat me up inside and I think about it for so long.
But you still
because of like something I just did this weekend that you know that I did and it's been like terrible and I've been so upset about.
But you've been super confrontational. You, in spite of that, you will be confrontational where you need to be. I
know, because I feel like if it comes to like a truth thing, but that goes back to me being like black and white. So when it comes to like a matter of truth, I can. I don't really like it, but I can do it if I need to do it. But again, on truth. But if I like make a mistake, I'm not somebody that's like very brave and confident and can just like walk and be like, well, it is what it is. Like I messed up. It's like really hard for me. Yeah,
that's good. I mean, I think that's walking that fine line.
So how would I be brave? Tell me how to be brave.
I think you are brave. I think you're brave because you do. You hold both hands. Like, you know, we talk about like a word from the Lord is like the punch in the stomach and the kiss on the mouth. You carry that balance in really difficult places of like being able to speak truth without it compromising it, but doing so while you're sensitive to somebody. And that is a risk. And I guess you could reduce bravery down to just willing to take risks.
Right. I know. And like, how do you do the risk where it's like, I guess like the pressure of always feeling like if you do something wrong or you mess up or you are in your flesh, or even if you're not, like even if you're totally like in a loving way communicating something hard to somebody, the pressure of it being like, well, this reflects the church and this reflects Jesus. And then like people mad at the church.
But
and
every Christian reflects the church and reflects Jesus.
No, I know. But you don't want to be the reason that somebody, oh gosh. Wonder why we're in the state we're in.
Yeah, I know. So brave leaders.
Brave leaders.
Those two words together is like kind of what makes it interesting, because I think a lot of people who are brave and who are willing to, you know, go against, right, whatever it is, I think that at the same time, they're not doing so in a way that people can actually follow them. So like you're not a leader unless people are following you. And then as soon as people are following you, you are a leader.
Right.
So it's a little interesting, you know, it's a little bit of a slightly different way to look at leadership. Is just the idea of like, okay, who's doing what you're doing? Who's going where you're going? Who's saying what you're saying? Right. So if you're going to be brave, if you're going to be willing to take risks, if you're going to be willing to say hard things, but maintain the sensitivity of whatever it is, you doing it by yourself is like, great, high five, keep up the good work. But if you're doing it in a way that's like reproducible in other people's lives, well, now you're not just brave. Now you're a brave leader. So I think just being conscious of that, if that's true, and that really is what the church needs the most, which I think it is. I think churches don't want to say what needs to be said, and don't want to confront what needs to be confronted.
I mean, you have to be Holy Spirit led. You have to be like sensitive.
I mean, I think I just brought this up in the since we started doing the podcast again about that conference I was at and about discipline, church discipline. We do church discipline because we love people, right? Because it's family, and that's like that's just an extension of that piece. Not like we don't do church discipline like HR at a corporation,
right? Right.
But what's interesting about that, and where I think the difference is like when other pastors hear about how we do church discipline, it's like, oh my God, like that's like real church discipline. That's like you would ask somebody to leave, or you would tell somebody they need to step down from ministry, and it's like, yeah, and like guys are like, oh, whoa, that's like, wow, nobody really does that. And I think
Really?
not the way we do it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I think that, I say nobody. I mean, I'm sure people do it better than we do it.
Right.
God knows people do it better than we do it. But I think the point is, if you're going to be a brave leader, everything has to come from a place of the why. Like, why are we leading people in this direction? Why is it so important to practice good church discipline, even when it requires being brave and taking a risk?
Right.
Well, because where we're going is more important than where we are. If where we are is more important, then we'll do whatever we can to preserve where we are, which is go easy on that guy because we really need him.
Right.
Well, that's where we are. But where we're going, it's more important that we're pursuing integrity and character and all those things that we all wish we were a little better at.
It's good. Brave leaders.
Brave leaders.
I know. What would your encouragement for people be? Like, how do you act? A lot of times we want to be brave, but like our actions like have to line up with it. So what would be something that you would say, this is a good litmus test when you're making decisions or when you're like speaking to people, or like, how would you tell the average churchgoer, here's something like a way to like check your heart or check your interactions if you are being a brave leader?
I think you need to consider the consequences or the side effects, but not let the side effects dictate the decision.
Like in regard to what?
If you're going to call somebody out, if you're going to confront somebody, consider the side effects. Don't be ignorant of the fallout or of the impact or of the aftermath of confronting that. Don't be ignorant of the fact that that person's a leader, that person's a greenhouse overseer, that person has quite a following, and you may like
rock the boat.
Rock the boat, exactly. It's not just a single person in a lazy river tube. It's like there's a falling out there potentially. So you have to be considerate and conscious of that. However, you cannot let that dictate the decision.
Yeah.
If you aren't considerate and conscious of it, then you're just brash and you're not really careful of the bigger picture of where we're trying to get to. But if the other extreme is to have that outcome, that aftermath dictate the decision, then you won't make any decisions because every decision has consequences.
Right.
So
yeah, I think for me, like what I'm thinking of, like the average, just like we're Christians and we're just trying to live out here and do the right thing by our families and with the Lord and giving us strength and all of that. And I'm thinking brave leaders to me are like, hey, you have a family over for dinner and somebody is like, or their kid is bringing up stuff or behaving in a way, a lot of times it's like, hey, we might have to address something, not in like a judgmental type of way, but like, hey, no, I'm not going to expose my kid to that. So we're going to make some hard decisions and we have to leave early tonight.
Yeah.
Or like the first people you're leading is your family. And so I feel like being a brave leader for the sake of your family is like a great starting point. Like you have to lead yourself, first of all, then you're leading your family.
Right.
And a lot of that is out of situations that are not healthy for yourself
Absolutely.
or situations that are not healthy for your family. Being a leader means you're living at a level that's not in an arrogant way higher than those around you, but you're always striving to be more like Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that's what a leader is somebody, and I know like there's a following aspect to that, but there's also the like we're going to live differently. Like we want to live differently. We're going to take a higher road. We're going to choose like, hey, can we go drink at that party? Like, yeah, we can. Is that the best for us? Is that the best thing that the Lord has for us? Is that the best thing for our family? Is that the best thing for our kids? Probably not. Those hard decisions and stepping out of the norms are what I see as like a brave leader that we need to see more of as Christians in general.
So there you go. I think you're a brave leader in that sense.
Thanks.
You don't drink at parties.
That's true.
So good job.
Not drinking at any parties.
No, not today, Satan.
I know that's really pigeonholing it. I didn't mean to do that.
No, I get what you're saying though, and I do think that a lot of people are increasing. I think this is what happens when there's a move of God. Part of the side effect of that is people's convictions get heightened, and it's not because the Lord wants to strip us of our freedoms.
Right.
It's because He wants more people to experience freedom.
Yeah.
And so the more we're walking in it, and that is the high calling of not just positional leadership, but just identifiable leadership in anybody. Like any Christian, if they're living their life in a way that says, I have something better. Right. There's a more excellent way, and I'm walking in it, and my life is an indication that this is actually the right thing.
Right.
People see it. That's passive leadership. That's like, No, everybody's like active leadership, intentional, strategic, active leadership, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's like the most powerful leadership is leadership that's not trying.
Yeah.
The most powerful leadership is leadership that says, hey, you just sat down at a table full of equals. And by the time you're done having coffee, those people want what you have. Not because you came there to lead them, but because you came there with a better way.
Yeah.
And it's obvious.
I mean, don't you feel like that's what Jesus did?
Yes.
Like it wasn't like, here I am, like here I am, everybody look at me. You know what I mean? It was just like
He just taught.
Right.
Well, you know, there's all these scenes of like Jesus as a rabbi teaching in the synagogue. And what's interesting is like there were loads of rabbis, there were loads of teachers. So it's like philosophers in ancient Greece. You know, there were like all these people, and they would take turns teaching in the stadiums and in the, you know, the arenas. They were there to share their philosophy, to share their worldview, their dogma. And it was like that in Jerusalem. It was like that where Jesus traveled. There were teachers. I think that for us, we've got to realize that there are constantly people trying to lead. And what we have that's better is exactly what Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm following something bigger than me. And that's brave.
Yeah.
And it's risky.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth it.
It's good.
I
All right,
can
what
talk
else?
about that too much. So
I know. I don't know where they came from.
Hope everybody had a great Easter weekend.
Easter weekend.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
We were in our new room.
We're in the new space.
If anybody missed Sunday,
It was incredible.
I honestly don't think anyone missed Sunday. I think like the whole world was here on Sunday somehow.
It was great. It was super fun.
So, and like the couple people that couldn't be here have already said, we watched it. We watched the first service in the new room online, and man,
we had our like stellar His Kids team and hospitality teams and cafe teams that were like not able to be in the service because they're like serving and doing all sorts of things. So shout outs.
Brave leaders.
Brave leaders.
No, it was actually phenomenal, and I think it just spoke. There was like it's interesting because, and this was the other thing I wanted to talk about. As soon as that Sunday happens and it's over, for me, I think there are different types of people that are wired different ways, but for me, it's like this huge breath out. Like where you've been holding your breath for like months, maybe longer than months, but like the anticipatory sort of like heightened state of like I'm on the edge of my seat. And then for a long time it was, is this gonna even happen? Yeah. Right? And then we got the news literally Friday afternoon that yes, this is going to happen.
Like 3 o'clock Friday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're like crazy trying to send emails to the church and
and
people are like, how come you didn't let us know earlier? It's like,
right.
Doing the best we can.
Like you found out like 30 seconds after we did.
Yep.
But I love this, but I also feel like what's interesting is like the after party. It's not a party. It's like for me, I'm like, okay, what's my purpose again?
Oh my gosh.
Not literally, but like
good news for you. You get to write another message this week.
That's true. But it's like so much of your mental investment. I think several years ago we talked about this after Christmas and how it's like an adrenaline rush to get through Christmas.
Right.
Like from like the whole month of December.
Now, did we talk about in that episode
Gosh,
when we
don't ask me.
Okay.
Babe, it was 100 years ago.
I don't remember if we've talked about that has been one of like the challenges in our marriage is like the difference with which we kind of walk through that kind of stuff. And I can't remember if we've talked about it before.
I don't think so.
But that's hard. That has been something that's really hard because of how you approach things that, I don't know, if there's a project, what's the right word for it? If there's a project or something that needs to be done, like you would say this needs to be done. And in my head, I see like quotes around it, like needs to be done.
Oh, yeah. I see that when you say things need to be done too.
I know.
I'm like, does that
that's
really
true.
need to be done?
That's true. I guess that's not a good example then. So it's more things
I think it's like just your posture approaching the thing.
Yeah.
You know, because I think we both agreed the sanctuary needed to be done.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't really the argument was, does this need or not need to be done? It was more of like how we're wired. And I think that's not just hard on marriages. It can be hard on marriages. I think it's hard on individuals. I think that people don't always, when so much of your life or your mental space, we've talked a lot about mental capacity, just the two of us, but you know, when so much of your head and your heart and everything else is invested into a thing and then that thing comes to completion.
Right.
It's brought to the day of completion and it's like, now what? Well, sorry, what am I living for again? And obviously, you know, all the spiritual things are still true.
Right. But there's a ton of health complications with that too.
Absolutely.
They say people who live in like, I remember I can't remember the exact details, but there was something during COVID or towards the end of COVID where you had like the nurses and doctors that had lived at such high intensity for like a certain amount of period.
Yeah.
That when it was over or like at the end of it, they were having like all sorts of health issues, whether it was like high blood pressure and stuff. And even though it was like done, like that high season.
Well, it takes years off your life.
Yeah.
And it's like your body has like introduced to itself like a very unrealistic chemical cocktail to stay going.
Right.
Even if you're
like,
not taking
is it cortisol?
substances.
There's something, I'm trying to think of what it is in your body. It's like the stress, kind of, it's supposed to be like fighting against the stressor.
Okay.
So your body like releases a ton of it.
Yeah.
All the time. And so I think it's your cortisol levels.
Right.
I probably should have done any type of research
that's all right.
before this. But
that's all right.
I'm just making stuff up at this point.
Somebody else can fact check it.
Do your own research.
Do your own research. We might be only telling lies on here.
Oh,
but,
gosh.
No,
brave leaders.
But I do think that there's a reality to this, and it's not just in like multi-million-dollar building projects. It's also just life. Mm-hmm. It's just family. It's just, hey, if we can get to the end of this year, hey, if we can get to we are always living to the light at the end of the next tunnel. And I think that sometimes it's like, and the Lord did convict me of this at several points over this last project. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it was probably worse. The house thing was probably worse for me than the building thing. Yeah. Which, of course, I was just talking to some ladies here this morning about how, like, of course, we chose, like, we had those both things happening simultaneously. But I think it's good for us, especially as believers, to, like, stay grounded, not just in like, okay, be content in all things, not just that, but like know who you are and what's important. Like if this thing never gets done. Yeah. That's the question I think that has always the Lord challenged me with, like going way, 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 way back. If what you're waiting for never happens, who are you? Right. What are you? What are you doing? What's your purpose if that thing goes away? Right.
And what are you missing out on as you're waiting for something to be done? Because I think we can see that often, and this is kind of some of the arguments that we've had in the past, and I think we actually have talked about this because of like vacation and stuff, and you're like, well, I don't want to go on vacation until this is done, like A, B, or C. Right. And I feel like I know that there are a lot of people out there that are either married to somebody or somebody that kind of deals with like something similar where it's like, I can't do such and such until this is done. And so you're missing out on like a ton of life and important things with your family because you're waiting for like the next thing to be done. And there's what we've said is there's always a next thing. There's always a next thing. There's always another thing.
Yeah, it's true. It's like for me that happens in a microcosmic thing too, like where on a day-by-day thing, I don't want to eat dinner until I'm done with everything for the day. I know. I don't want to eat dinner and then go out for a meeting. I know. But part of that is because like I don't enjoy dinner as much, and if it's just as easy for me to eat a couple hours later, right, I'd rather eat that. And then the same thing with...
And then that stresses me out because you're like trying to make dinner and you're trying to like coordinate with your family, and you're like, can you eat with your family? No, you're not, because you have a meeting, so you can't eat until that's done. And so it's very interesting. If you look like 2 weeks ago, there was the lost wallet. Oh, yeah. There was the lost wallet. There's been the lost jacket. There's the lost pants, the lost shirt.
I found the shirt.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I found the shirt. It was in the closet. It's just hanging out between other shirts.
I cannot. I mean,
you knew it was there. You literally said it's probably just in your closet. And I'm like, it's not in my closet.
I mean, I'm like, you're going to find it. Let me tell you, like, people think this is not real. This is real, and you were...
People know it's real, Zach, babe. People know me
he
well
was
enough.
So stressed out. We're trying to leave with our whole entire family to take this, like, road trip.
I'm stressed out about more than just that.
Zach's family's in town and all this stuff, and you can't leave because he doesn't know where a shirt is that you're not even wearing that day. Well, it was just the idea that there was a shirt in the house.
It bothered me.
Maybe not in the house. And it was a shirt you couldn't find. So it was ripping through everything and then gets in the car all stressed out about a shirt. And I said, you are going to find the shirt. Nobody came inside the house and stole your denim shirt.
I don't know. There was that weird person walking in the driveway the other day.
Oh my gosh, that is weird.
I'm just saying.
That is weird. I could ask Michelle Stebbings about that still.
She knows everything. I would ask her. She knows.
You get yourself all worked up and you can't focus. You can't be nice. Even though you want to be nice, you're trying to be nice, but it's coming through a filter of your frustration because you like lost something. Yeah. And it sucks up your life, and it's based on a shirt.
I don't think it sucks up my life.
It sucks up my life, and if that matters at all to you...
It does. But but how many years do we need to
Have
be
I
married?
lost based on that?
Babe, I like your gray hair, so.
Oh my gosh.
Let
I
it
didn't
go.
even. Who's bringing up gray hair, Zach?
Well, you were talking about years off your life being gone. Anyways, end of day, I just want to encourage people out there. And again, it's the pot calling the kettle black, but it's something to just be mindful of. Like, know yourself going in, know how you're wired, and know that it has effects on people that love you and people you love. And also, even if you're just like a bachelorette or a bachelor out there and you're like, well, my life doesn't really affect anybody right now. I think it's like a matter of our own health sometimes to find a baseline and not live from, yes, glory to glory, but not mountaintop to mountaintop. There's a big difference.
I know. That's why there's been, and I agree with the push that there has been over the last like decade of mindfulness. And I feel like there's a lack of it because our culture is so fast paced right now. There's no time to self-reflect and there's no time for like mindfulness or meditation or reflective time. And I don't mean like yoga meditation. I just mean meditating in general. Yikes. As like the Bible tells us to meditate, and just taking time to think about like, okay, when you're like frustrated about something or like all caught up in something or stressed out about something, it's not a way to live. Right. This is it. You get like one chance, you get one life. YOLO, and I think we are just like wasting it a lot. Yeah. Because we're so busy and we're so on to the next thing and stressed out. And
what does the last O stand for?
Once.
Oh, you only live once.
Yep.
That's it. Okay. Good.
YOLO.
Glad to clear that up.
Every time I hear that, I think of Trolls. Do you remember?
No. I don't know.
Everybody.
It's great. Great movie. Great soundtrack.
It was a great soundtrack. There's coming out with a second one.
I want to also just take this opportunity to give a big shout out to the President Joe Biden.
Come on, man.
Oh my gosh. Thank you notes.
Yeah. Thank you for, yes.
We're going to work on that thank you note.
Choosing Easter.
Easter
Sunday. Easter Sunday is...
We don't have time for this.
The good news is that Easter's on a different day every year, right?
Next year it's like April 19th. Or 20th or something. April 20th, I think.
Is it April 20th? Oh, well, maybe we'll have better weather. Although this was a beautiful day.
It was a beautiful day.
I feel like it's important to talk about transgender visibility.
Come on, man.
And
you think it's important to talk about that right now?
I think it is. Well, now that we have a day honoring it, I don't want to be negligent or careless with,
right, of course not.
You know, something as important as a national recognized day. So that'll maybe be next week. But
as transgender visibility. Is that what you said?
I think so, yeah. Okay. Transgender.
We'll have to look into that more for next week's episode. Just to know what that even means.
Yeah. Well,
because I feel like when you do days like that, it just leaves a lot of other people out.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about that.
I just feel like there's a lot of other groups of people that are actually even more of a majority that have been left out.
Even more of a majority. That's like an oxymoron.
No, because they'll say like there's so many transgenders that nobody like pays attention, and they're a larger group than you can imagine. But I feel like that about like blind people and deaf people, and like where's the
they probably all
where's
have
their
days.
Visibility day?
They might have days.
You think so?
I don't know, but I know that.
Have you ever heard of Blind Visibility Day?
There's a.
We gotta end this podcast. I gotta go pick up kids. Love you guys so much. We'll see you next Friday on Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Am I in danger?
It's a rite of passage.